So let's talk about, some of the determinants of immunity, because people hear about this all the time. And I think that there's a lot of misdirection, a lot of oversimplification, much of it focused on selling um, supplements to people, really. And the things that I learned about this year, and particularly in this regard, were the role of fat soluble vitamins in immunity, the role of minerals in immunity, and you have to have balance between all these things. And you also have to have the right light in your environment in order to be healthy. And people, I was just reading the other day comments that the nations with the lowest death rate have been countries that had hydroxychloroquine over the counter. And that's an interesting theory. But here's the other thing. Those countries are all tropical. They all have very strong ultraviolet light. When you look at cases of everything from autism to colon cancer to breast cancer, the incidence tracks with the amount of incident ultraviolet light in that area. So you have places like the Rocky Mountain West, where there's lots of ultraviolet light because they're at high elevation, that have higher rates lower rates of many diseases than places at an equivalent elevation in, say, Minnesota, that are at low elevation with high levels of cloud cover, or Seattle, Washington. And so all of these factors, take into account. If you go back to the 1918 flu, the highest rates of mortality were recorded in New London, Connecticut, that of the records that I've been available to review. And the lowest rates were in Brownsville, Texas. Well, that's a very clear north-south gradient, right? That's about vitamin D. It's about UVA and its effects on melanocyte-stimulating hormone. It's about its effects on the endocannabinoid system, your steroid hormones, your enkephalin system, all these other hormonal systems that can build your health. And so, at the bottom line has basically been for me that you have to eat a varied and diverse diet with adequate nutritional density, avoiding things like empty carbs and getting adequate sunlight, getting adequate ultraviolet light. For me, that means a diet where I have a certain amount of shellfish, a certain amount of organ meats, a certain amount of bone broth. And I have ultraviolet lights that I use therapeutically for myself and my patients, as well as red and infrared lights for the benefits of melatonin and mitochondrial function that, of course, we see with photobiomodulation. And, that in about, 5 minutes is what I learned in 2020.
Well, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive and start with your habits, because I've spent a lot of time looking at BJ Fogg's book called Tiny Habits, as well as James Clear's book, he's just sold over 3 million copies, called Atomic Habits. And this is one of the things that I drew in the latest video on social media about what I took away from 2020 is that our habits, determine a lot of our lifestyles, and whether it's health, whether it's financial, whether it's relationship, it's these automated responses that run, or machines that run in the background, that don't require a lot of significant energy to execute. And so tell us a little bit about adopting specific habits with regards to lifestyle. Let's unpack light, because I've been spending a bit of time with Andrew Huberman. We'll put a link there, listening to his videos, and how important light is into the eyes, your sunrise and your sunsets, and maybe those tropical areas. I think of South Africa. We have very low death rate with the corona that came last year. And I think it's a lot of people getting good light, and also not having that much damaging blue light, just because of, being a third world and first world country. But unpack light for us from a habit point of view.
Definitely. So for me, I wake up with natural light coming through the window. It's very important to me to live in an area that has low ambient light pollution at night, because that allows me to then have the sun coming through the window. With people who are in, for example, some people have an unfortunate placement of their apartment, their home. It's near a street lamp. I recommend that they get blackout curtains. If there's really bad light pollution at night, I tell them to get some kind of lamp that will turn on at sunrise or near sunrise, so that they're preserving because otherwise they have trouble getting up if they're just in a dark room. They tell me they feel sleepy late into the morning. First thing I do is open the window, get the light into my eyes to wake me up, to start my day. I call it my morning ritual after that, brushing my teeth, prepping coffee, getting something to eat. And then I shower. And then after my shower, when I'm obviously disrobed, I use my therapeutic lights, red and infrared, and then ultraviolet. And the UV lights I'm using the Sperti D lamp for 5 to 10 minutes a day or every other day, depending on what my schedule is like. And then the red and infrared light, I try to get 10 to 20 minutes a day. And I may take some breaks for that in the middle of the day as well. And then during the day, my office is naturally lit. I'm using as little artificial light as possible. But one of the things that I've been struck by in the last year, as I've started measuring levels of light intensity in my environment, is that even brightly lit offices often have a intensity of light that's much lower than that outside. And so I'm taking multiple breaks during the day to go walk and get some time out underneath the sun, which is still the brightest light we've got.